Next up, we have a great panel. I'm going to let our moderator introduce it. Really honored and privileged to have Sammy Roth here, who was a longtime journalist with the LA Times. Many of us followed closely Boiling Point, and now I'm excited that he's launched his new endeavor, climate-colored goggles. Welcome, Sammy.
Yep, Sammy Roth now, as he said, doing climate-colored goggles, and really excited here. We've spent most of the day talking about clean transportation and clean energy and growing green jobs in Los Angeles ahead of the Olympics. Using the Olympics as a catalyst for change in these spaces. So in this discussion now, we're going to take, I guess, a little bit of a different approach to the connection between climate change and sports. And I'm really excited. We've got two Olympic athletes here with us who I'll introduce very shortly. And we're going to talk about how climate change is actually affecting sports and why it's necessary for the future and integrity of sports in the Olympics and in professional sports in Los Angeles and all over the world to make these investments in clean transportation, clean energy, clean technology, so that we can keep enjoying and loving the sports that that we're all big fans of here and around the world. So again, two fabulous speakers. First, here on my left, we've got Sam Mattis. He is a track and field athlete. He does the discus throw. He participated in the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo for Team USA. Placed 11th in those Olympics. He also 8th. I'm sorry.
Oh my God!
This is what I get for trusting Wikipedia. I should have used Grokpedia probably. Also did 2024 in Paris for Team USA. He's hoping to participate here in Los Angeles as well, and I am sure he will.
Hopefully.
Yes, and also here next to Sam, we've got Dotsie Bausch. She is a pro cyclist. She was a silver medalist for Team USA in London in 2012. And she's also the founder and executive director of Switch for Good, which is a nonprofit that advocates for dairy-free and plant-based food for athletes. Round of applause. And I'll just say briefly, they are both members of a group called Eco Athletes, which is a really wonderful organization. And I'm just going to quote from their own description here. Eco Athletes works to identify and equip the Jackie Robinsons and Megan Rapinoes of the climate crisis to lead climate action. So they're a really fantastic organization and helped me find and connect with Sam and Dotsie today for this conversation. So let's talk about how climate change is impacting sports. And I'm sure for those of you sitting in the audience, it probably doesn't take too much imagination to bring to mind heat waves and wildfire smoke and snow and ice and all of the ways that sports depends on having a livable, survivable climate in the same way that it does for the rest of us. Dotsie, I want to start with you here. Maybe tell us a little bit about sort of how your climate consciousness started to grow and how this became an issue that really mattered to you and what brought you to Eco Athletes. Talk about your journey a little bit.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, y'all. It's really an honor and pleasure to be here. I became most aware of what was happening to the planet right around the time I was competing in the Olympics in 2012, like just barely before I took eating animals out of my diet. And that led me to understanding the immense amount of pressure that animal agriculture puts on our planet. Animal agriculture is about a third of all of the global emissions. So it's a big issue and something that I think that so many of us need to start talking about and recognizing. And so that led me into doing more climate work, if you will, and that is a portion of the work that we do at Switch for Good. And that's how I met Lou and Eco Athletes. And he asked me to join because he said, I need athletes who are willing to talk about food. It's not a popular conversation. People don't like to change what they eat, but what I love about it is it's the easiest thing that we can do. It's just whatever is at the end of your fork. Making small shifts can make a really big impact on saving our precious planet. And I love that I feel like it's in my ability to do that, whereas other solutions, they may not be equitable, they may not be affordable, I may not be able to advance certain technologies, but I know that I can make that choice with what is at the end of my fork, and I know it matters.
I love that, and I want to circle back, and we'll talk a lot more about that. Sam, tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so I think I was always aware of environmental problems and climate change growing up. Definitely always politically aware, but to me it struck me as such a big problem with such an obvious solution or set of solutions. And I was like, someone will take care of that. Like, I'm gonna go to school and try to come out with a nice degree in finance, make money, donate it, and then get on with my life. And then I graduated in 2016 and it was like, well, no one's actually doing anything. And the adults in the room weren't taking care of the problem. 2016, I graduated school, turned down an internship from a bank, offer from a bank, and was like, I'm gonna try to make the Olympic team. That's my dream. And I didn't in 2016, but I had the next 4, and because of COVID, 5 years to think about what I wanted to do next after I was done competing. Turns out I'll still be competing 8 years after I thought I'd be done competing, but in the meantime I had a lot of time to think and realized that climate change is one of the biggest problems facing humanity right now. I read David Wallace Wells's Uninhabitable Earth when it came out, and that
changed
really
a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, for sure. I think that took it from something that was on the like, oh, we should probably do something about this, definitely needs to be addressed, to like, this is what I want my life to be about now. So in the years since, I've been trying to get more involved with athletics and sport and sustainability, and hopefully find a career in that someday.
And it sounds like at the Paris and Tokyo Olympics, you had some pretty nasty experiences with extreme heat. Is that right?
Yeah, not just Paris and Tokyo, but the Tokyo Olympic trials in Eugene were during the Northwest heat wave in 2021.
Eugene, Oregon, right?
Yeah, in Eugene, Oregon, that's where they always are. Air temperatures at the hottest part of the day during our Olympic trials, which for most people, that's like their first chance to try to make an Olympic team in 5 years, and you're competing and it's 116 degrees outside. There were runners who got burns on their knees from the starting blocks because the track temperature was 140 degrees. They had to delay events, move them to the middle of the night. Then Tokyo was 90 something degrees with crazy humidity. We have world championships in non-Olympic years, and 3 of the last 4 world championships have been hit by heat waves. And the one that wasn't was in Doha, where it's 110 degrees anyway. So it's making competing really hard, but as athletes, like, we'll push ourselves. People also will push themselves too much and pass out during their races, but it's also just becoming dangerous for fans to sit in the stands for a couple hours when it's that hot outside.
That actually reminds me, I just saw the news this morning that the organizers, I don't know if anyone here has seen this yet, but the World Cup organizers just announced today that they're going to be doing, for the first time ever, World Cup-wide mandatory 3-minute breaks at the middle of each half in every World Cup game, because there are such significant concerns that are being raised by players just about the heat conditions that they're going to have in North America this summer. So clearly this is a concern across sports. One more thing, you also told me, I think, that you had a pretty terrible experience with wildfire smoke in one of the competitions that you were in?
Not competitions, but training.
So
competitions are one thing. As an athlete, you're going to push yourself in a competition, whatever the conditions are. Everybody has to deal with it. But training day to day, my training days are usually 5 to 8 hours. And they're outside because you can't throw a discus inside, in most places at least. So during the wildfires the last 2 years, with the smoke coming down from Canada, it was extremely difficult to breathe during training. Most of us were wearing masks. And then I live in the middle of Pennsylvania. We don't get wildfires, but there was a wildfire last year about 2 miles from my house. It wasn't huge, but it was still a fire extremely close that affected the air quality and training, and also was just a little scary being that close to my house.
Mm-hmm. Talking about wearing masks, Dotsie, you were telling me a story too that I think is worthwhile here. This isn't really a climate change impact, but it's air quality for sure. Talk about what it was like testing out air quality masks in Beijing when you were getting ready for the Olympics there.
Yeah, well, to your point, this is the story about how fossil fuel combustion is a lot more than heat the planet. It's extremely polluted in Beijing. This was 2008. I did not go to the Olympics there. I went to the Olympics and won my silver medal in 2012. But in 2008, I was at the test event, and I was the worst of the best. I was not going to make the team, but they still had me there as kind of a backup. And they decided to do, I was the guinea pig. They decided to do an experiment on me because most of the rest of the people there were making the team, and they didn't want to do this to them. So they put me outside. It was, the air was so thick. I mean, it was just hard maybe, if you were to go on like a really easy run. It was very, very, very hard to breathe. And when athletes are at effort, they take in about 20 times the amount of air as somebody that's just sedentary. So that would also be 20 times the amount of pollution. Whew. So I'm on the bike, and they're wanting me to, and they have a mask on because they're going to measure at what point the pollution impedes my lungs so badly that I can no longer produce watts on the bicycle. I should have sued them probably. I'm thinking about it right now. I'm sitting me like, what the? Anyway, and I stopped the test, like, I would want to say, 6 minutes in, because I was like, this is long-term damage that's happening. This definitely, they shouldn't have been doing this to anyone. They shouldn't have tested a single soul, athlete or not. But I stopped the test early and called it off. And there were some words, but I should have stood up for myself more after that incident.
I mean, I'm sorry that happened to you, obviously. It sounds dystopian. I mean, that sounds like something that you would see in like climate dystopia fiction rather than something that really happened.
I'm just like outside on the sidewalk outside of the hotel with like 6 sports scientists, like waiting to see how I'm gonna react and when I might fall over. Yeah.
I mean, all of the conversations that are being had here today about cleaning up the air in Los Angeles and showcasing, I mean, you live part-time in Orange County, by the way, I should say, for everyone to know that. The discussions that are being had showcasing the best version of this city with, cleaner air and electric buses and more public transit and easier ways to get around without being just in polluting cars all day long and sitting in traffic. I imagine that for the two of you, this is the first time you're being exposed to a lot of this in this much detail, at least. What do you think? I mean, do these sound like reasonable strategies as an athlete who hopes to be participating here, Sam, and Dotsie as an athlete who's participated in past Olympics? What do you make of it? Do these sound like strategies you want to see as Olympic athletes? What do you think?
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was just in Tokyo for World Championships for track and field this past year. And when I was done competing, it was just an amazing experience. You walk outside the hotel, walk across the street. You don't have to check a train schedule because there's going to be a train every 3, 4, 5 minutes. Or if not, maybe you can check a bus schedule, but you still see they're coming every 5, 10 minutes. You don't have to worry about reliability. There's transit and connectedness everywhere. You can get everywhere in the city. And I felt similarly in Paris when I was at the Olympics there. When I was done competing, you could ride their metro just about anywhere in the city and get there pretty easily. And I come to LA to do competitions or training camps fairly often, and it's not the easiest city to get around in. So
I can confirm that.
So I think
Sorry, everybody.
I think everybody wants that ability. Like, if you want to drive, sure, but I think people want to be able to also just sit down on a train or a bus and have that take them places without having to buy a car. So if the LA 28 Olympics are the catalyst for making LA a more transit-oriented, connected city, I think that's something that athletes do notice that. And then I think fans, obviously, and most importantly, the people that live here will benefit from that too.
Dotsie, what do you think?
Yeah. I have to bring up commending Janet Evans and Sunny Sobrian and David McCallum on the sustainability team. Janet Evans is running the whole thing, but the other two are head of the sustainability team, and they are all 3 very committed to making sure that for the fans, LA 2028 is somewhere around 60% plant-based for the spectators, which will have an enormous impact on the world being able to experiencing delicious food that's planet-friendly and not so, doesn't put so much pressure on
And you've been advocating for that, right?
Yes, for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they're really stepping up. I mean, a lot of times there's there's a lot of people deny that food makes an impact, and we kill 90 billion animals a year and about 2.7 trillion fish. I mean, the scale of the waste and the water usage and the waste of the water and the methane emissions from that is astronomical. So I appreciate that the sustainability team, they're looking at everything and they're doing everything that we have talked about today so far, but I think it's exciting that they're also moving food into that for the world to be able to have that experience and maybe change over.
I'm curious what, one thing I'm really curious about, and for both of you, but Dotsie, maybe we can pick up with you here. What do you when you talk to fans or when you hear from fans who are engaged on climate and sustainability, what are those conversations like? Are there a lot of folks who are really passionate about food or about clean energy or about making sure that the heat doesn't get so bad that it's going to be harmful for them or for athletes? I just wonder, as athletes yourselves, like what is it like when, or maybe the answer is you don't meet that many fans that care about this stuff. I'm just wondering what that engagement is like.
Yeah, no, I think the fans do. I mean, some of them care very much. I feel like one of the easiest ways, and that I've talked to a lot of people, whether they're fans or not, but want to see athletes thrive, is sort of using the theory of marginal gains from athletes, right? A lot of times athletes will talk about marginal gains, and it's basically training smarter, not harder. And so when I talk to fans of the Olympic Games or fans of sports in general, they're very interested in what they can do today, tomorrow, maybe next year, but cutting that up into gains that they can make one time, one day, 1 month, right? So that it's palatable. Like you can okay, I think I can have an impact if I make marginal gains. Because to me, the whole climate crisis, it's so massive that I'll admit it's easy for me to just stick my head in the sand. I mean, my nephews and nieces are going to have to deal with it. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to be gone before this really blows up. I will think that way, and that's not an okay way to think. But I do better when I think about marginal gains and how I can make little tiny steps all the way. And I think people really respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think fans are really supportive of this, and I know athletes definitely are. So World Athletics, which governs all of track and field, does a survey each year for its athletes about sustainability, and this past year I think around 80% of athletes said that they were either somewhat or very concerned about climate change affecting sport, and the fans definitely are too, but they're supportive. Like everybody wants to see something being done. I think fans more look to sport and athletes for a bit of leadership and guidance on, what are the steps I can do? What is your sport doing to advance sustainability initiatives? And if they can take that into their own lives, great, but they at least want to see, or at least a large majority of them do want to see that the sport is trying and doing something, and that a stadium is working towards having less of an impact and fewer emissions.
I'm glad you bring up the point about athletes being leadership and sort of bringing people along as part of this conversation, whether it's food, whether it's clean transportation, whether it's stadiums cleaning up their act. Because I mean, I think it's cool to have the two of you here on the stage today, especially as American athletes. Because one thing that I have found, writing stories about climate in sports is that in sort of the most popular professional sports in the U.S. and Major League Baseball, the NBA, NFL, there definitely seems to be a reluctance among some of the biggest name athletes to engage on climate at all and to talk about it because, unfortunately, it's politically controversial. That's just the way things are, and it's made people reluctant to get into it. So it was very cool to see Russell Westbrook on the screens here today, making this something that he was willing to get involved with. So I'm really interested. You guys, through the Olympics and through participating in international competitions, are, I'm sure, meeting and talking with athlete and through eco-athletes or talking with folks all over the world. Do you notice a difference between U.S. and international athletes and how folks are talking about this? I guess I'm just curious in general, what your discussions are like with other athletes and with folks who care about climate, and whether you notice any difference between American athletes and folks in other countries.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, there are kind of two tiers of athletes. There's the Russell Westbrook and like major league type athletes, and then just, Olympic athletes who, for the most part, are trying to get by. And I think a lot of those athletes, both in the US and around the world, are definitely very willing to speak up. I think in some countries, maybe they speak up a little less because some things are just more front of mind, like how do I pay rent? Like how can I take care of my family? Is definitely like the central theme for most athletes. I think in other countries where they get a little bit of support, they're very willing to speak up. But I do definitely think there's a need for more high-profile athletes like Russell Westbrook and people in like NBA, MLB, NFL to step up and start talking about these. I think I see that in other countries more. Like their bigger athletes will take stands on issues like this and sustainability. But that needs to happen more in the US. And if that can come from like a lot of smaller athletes like us speaking up and that bubbling up and reaching higher profile athletes, then that would be great, but it's definitely a need.
Yeah, I find athletes have a lot more freedom of their voice in Europe and UK especially. Athletes tend to have, that really care about the climate, feel very conflicted on flying. We talked about that. Yeah, because it's like, I talked to a group of UK athletes. They're retired, so they're not flying for competition. So they've completely given up flying. And I obviously don't fly for competition anymore, but I'm unwilling to not see my family in Kentucky. So I realize there's these things that we all have embedded that we're kind of unwilling to do, which then kind of goes back to the marginal gains thing again, where it's like you can select as many other areas as you can, but the transportation people that are fixing all these light rails and cars and everything to fix the planes, because it is really it's so heavy on my heart every time I step on a plane. And like I said to you, I feel like I tell myself, well, this plane is going to go with you or without you, so it doesn't matter. But if we all just say it doesn't matter, I feel very conflicted about that style of transportation.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I asked both of you if you would come here to be in this room, and I was grateful that you said yes, because I think it's important for this group of people to hear from athletes who are experiencing the impacts of climate change, because I think it heightens the urgency of this conversation and sort of brings into the real world some of the decarbonization stuff that can feel abstract at times. But at the same time, yeah, of course, I'm thinking about this too. I think about this when I agree to go moderate panels and at conferences, and I've written stories about how the rejiggering of like the NCAA conferences is going to lead to massively more emissions when UCLA is flying everywhere across the country rather than staying on the West Coast most of the time. So it's a real thing, and I can't imagine it's easy for you guys when you're spending your life doing this type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I flew here to be here today, which feels
and again,
crazy. Yeah, but from like a climate perspective, if you're just looking at your personal carbon footprint, like as an athlete, you're a criminal. Because I think I flew something like 100,000 miles this year to different meets. But I think that's the wrong way to frame it. I think, especially coming to a conference like this, yeah, there's a footprint for that. But what I'm hoping is that this is the catalyst for reducing people's footprint in the future and having a positive impact that ripples out, that outweighs all of the emissions from my flying. Like, obviously, if you don't need to fly, like, don't. I would love to see aviation get electrified and reduce its emissions. That seems like it might be a really hard task. So I think it's more about tackling what you can and making sure that your positive impact is gonna far outweigh any emissions that you create from flying. And I think in sport, that's really tough, and I would love to see more of an ambitious take on fan and athlete travel, because I think that's a piece that's super hard to grapple with, but I think it needs to be dealt with.
So 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up. For the people in this room, we've talked, and if you want to repeat things you've already said, that's okay, because repetition is not bad. What is the case that you would make for why it is so important to act with urgency over the next 2 years on all of the initiatives that are being discussed today? We've set these deadlines in Los Angeles of, all of this stuff has to get done by 2028, and these deadlines have been set for a while, and frankly, LA is behind on everything, and I think everybody here knows that. It's not a big controversy for me to say that. But from your guys' life experience, why would you say, like, here is why you should really be acting with urgency and moving quickly to get all of this good stuff done?
I think we're in a warning period right now. I don't know if you guys agree. Like, it feels like all these things that we're talking about, the changing of the climate and what we've noticed with heat and pollution and snow-capped mountains and all of the issues that we've all discussed all day, it feels like this is just like a warning phase. And I don't even think that we can imagine what is about to unfold, unleash on all of us if we don't all take actions, and whether that's marginal gains or maximal gains. But I think for athletes especially, like, we're not gonna have the fresh water to surf in or swim in, and we're not gonna have the snow-capped mountains to ski or snowboard on. We're not gonna have what we think that we just are gonna automatically have if we don't take action.
Yeah, basically what Dotsie said. I think if you love sport and want to protect it, like, you have to act now and urgently. I know, like, LA is the Summer Olympics, but the Winter Olympics are definitely, like, under imminent threat. Some of those sports might not be able to be contested. Like Sammy said, the World Cup is instituting new water break rules and cooling break rules. Like, sport is going to look a lot different, but I think there's a threat of it and certain sports just not being able to be contested, or, especially in more disadvantaged areas, you might not be able to play certain sports because you don't have the infrastructure to cool people down. But, zooming out beyond sport, I think the 28 Olympics represent an opportunity to do something that could be extremely, like, changing of Los Angeles and inspiring to a lot of cities and people around the world. I don't know if it's possible for a mega event to be sustainable because of all the travel and emissions that are going to come with it. But what it can do is leave a legacy, whether that's public transit or clean energy infrastructure or new innovation that's going to power the sustainability of the future. Like, those can be really powerful legacies, but that has to happen by LA 28 so that athletes in the world can see and be inspired from that.
That would be such a good ending point, but I will ask the one more question.
That was good. That was good.
That would be so good. I'm going to do a slight twist, Matt, on the question you wanted us all to ask. What would be, which was supposed to be your vision for 2028, but what would be one thing that you'd want someone walking away from the 2028 Olympics to say, man, that was cool, besides something that happened actually on the field of play? Dotsie, you go first.
Man, that food was good. If I'm to be honest, that's true.
No, that's
okay. Thank you.
I figured you'd say that. Man, that food was good. Sam?
Wow, I was able to take a train in LA and it wasn't a big deal. Like, that'd be sick.
Thank you both. And since there's a minute left on the clock, I'll do just a very quick self-plug. If you're interested in the intersection of climate and sports, I write a newsletter called Climate Colored Goggles, where I'm going to be writing a lot about this over the next few years, about the World Cup, about the Olympics. ClimateColoredGoggles.com, and you can sign up. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.